Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, my high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, a channel favorite, BlueJay, has uploaded recently, and the video is called How to Win the Cold War. All right, I love learning and talking about the Cold War, and you know BlueJay is going to bring the funnies with it. Our original video link is down below. Make sure you're supporting BlueJay. They're one of the best channels for animated history. And thanks to those that recommended it over on the Discord server. That's the place that I'm able to see recommendations the best. While you're over on the Discord, check out the debate section. There are a bunch of fun historical conversations going on that you can come join in. All right, let's get started. Also, channel members, make sure your notifications are on because you are now going to be seeing videos early before their release date. Well, basically once they're uploaded, between that time to when they're supposed to be released, channel members are actually able to watch those videos early. So make sure you have notifications or whatever on so you can see that and join in the fun early. All right, 1987, is that where we're starting? I mean, it's called How to Win the Cold War. 87. Cold War is basically over, but let's see what we got.
The year is 1987, and Matthias Reuss was going to save the world. The West German teen wasn't a fan of living as the sauerkraut in the middle of the world's sauciest nuclear sandwich, especially when neither side could agree to lay off the plutonium mayo. I guess I have to solve this myself, said the stupid boy. So the 18-year-old wrote a 20-page manifesto, a sentence that normally screams stay home from school, but this manifesto detailed instructions for Gorbachev.
Anytime I hear a teenage manifesto, it's usually because something awful is happening, okay? Like some violent attack. We don't need any more manifestos, please.
How to advance world peace. The next steps of his plan were rather
peace.
simple.
Fantastic.
All he had to do was take this manifesto, hop in a Cessna, and fly from the west directly into Moscow, where he could hand deliver it to Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev himself. With only 50
Is that basically with the sanctions and all that stuff, like how you had to get to Russia from West Germany? Could you not go from Germany straight to Finland? Because they weren't part of the Soviet Union. But go through Faroes and then Iceland? That's nuts.
Where he could hand deliver it to Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev himself. With only 50 hours of flight experience, Matthias took to the skies and into Soviet territory. Air defenses were put on high alert. Soviet MiGs pulled up next to and flew by him. But much like an Activision Blizzard employee, Matthias wasn't going to take no for an answer. Through sheer dumb luck, every surface-to-air missile and fighter jet was denied permission to engage, assuming he was just a dumb student with his transponder turned off. They realized their mistake too late once Matthias landed an aircraft directly onto Red Square, marking the first
I have
time
heard
the
of
German
this.
invasion ever got to Moscow. What would Lenin think?
That's absolutely insane that a plane like from Germany or something like that could land there at the Red Square. The Red Square is right by the Kremlin, right? The operating center of the Soviet Union. Having something land right there, that's crazy that it just didn't get shot down.
If he could see this. Oh, he's right there. After limited mingling, since he forgot one thing during his packing for a Russian diplomatic mission,
from there too?
The Russian language, he was arrested by the KGB and charged with not only violation of flight laws, but also malicious hooliganism, which if you've ever pounded dollaritas at Applebee's with Trey, you understand that term all too well. The embarrassment of the Soviet military gave Gorbachev the opportunity to push reforms and sack hundreds of military officials once it was shown they couldn't even shoot down a measly civilian aircraft.
By the way, if you don't understand the Gorbachev Pizza Hut thing down there, I did a commentary reaction video on that. Yeah, Mikhail Gorbachev, the final leader of the Soviet Union, did an ad for Pizza Hut. Something that would probably make Lenin spin in his grave, right? Working with those capitalists.
Except for that one time. While he wasn't able to build his imaginary bridge between East and West, having at least somewhat of an impact helps Matthias handle this rejection well, but apparently only for 2 years, as he later stabbed a woman to the brink of death for it.
Wait, what?
Why are you telling me all this? Just
hold on, there was some extra info. Russ stabbed a female co-worker who had rejected him. The victim better survive. Oh, he's like an incel? Oh. What the... Okay, yep. All right. The dude wrote a manifesto. It now just negated. Apparently now all manifestos are now sign of future violence. Okay, this guy just did it. No more manifestos for anybody. Okay, we're done.
To the brink of death for it.
Nope, it's early onset violence.
Why are you telling me all this? Just giving you some food for thought, Alex, because now it's up to you to end the Cold War and save the world. What? Why me? Why can't you leave me alone? Well, as you can see, I didn't do all that great of a job at it, and also, you're a lot of fun for me. But Don't worry, champ. I've got a titillating tally of tales of wacky capitalist and commie shenanigans to help teach even you how to win the Cold War.
All right. So that's one way to win it. It was a longer video. It was up to 27
All right,
minutes.
Alex, let's take you back to...
Put a lot of work into it.
Sorry about that, Alex. One got
Who
away.
shot him?
You and the... One what? Just a piece of my soul. I had the boys in the lab split mine up. Split your soul? Why? Why, to put the pieces in the marketable plushies, of course. Kind of like Harry Potter, but less stupid and British. Introducing the first limited edition BlueJay plushie. I partnered up with the folks at U2's for my first ever
What a Mr.
merch
Terry
drop,
plushie.
creating a
I don't
dazzling
want one
little
of
dude
me.
that's perfect for all your plushie needs.
My globe
Looking for
logo?
a ceiling decoration? Not a problem. Need a confidant you can trust with all your secrets? He won't tell a soul. We tried. Want to put him in a jar? You can. Mad at me for making a mistake in a video? Brits use miles, not kilometers! Well, do we have an anger outlet for you? Jealous of my outdoor content adventures? Well, now you too can wiggle a bird plushie in front of a camera in public. It's too much fun! Still not convinced? Why don't I let this official review from Adam Driver change your mind?
What?
Merch. But my soul can only be split into so many pieces before I'm reduced to a shallow husk of
They
a
make
bird.
custom
So
ones or
click the link
something?
below
That's the
and
deal?
throw your money at your screen before it sells out forever. And now, back to the video. It's the mid-1940s. The end credits roll on the World War sequel, and the Allies are partying in Berlin to celebrate Hitler's first good painting. But the fanfare can only be short.
Here's a question, by the way. Do you guys think the Cold War really began before World War II ended? A lot of people say, definitely with the war over. Do you think it was before the war ended? And I'm saying not just like a couple days before with like the atomic bombs, but when did the Cold War really begin, do you think? Let me know down below.
Lived as a new tension was already brewing over the world's path forward, capitalism or communism. At the helm of this debate were the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, both of whom fought harder to collect economic allies than Nazi scientists. There was only room for one top gamer in this post-World War II scene, and as the main actors were now considering a trilogy, one was feeling rather confident with their early access to the nuclear DLC.
Thought, man.
And that is why we
You guys understand, right? I think people understand, with the hysteria of the Cold War in the 50s, 60s, etc. People were very much convinced that a World War III was not just inevitable, or not just possible, but inevitable, right? And that, of course, it was going to look different because this war would look different because of nukes. Like, nukes were supposed to change everything when it comes to warfare. World War III was almost assured. Now today, we don't really think of World War III as like an inevitability. A lot of people say, okay, maybe it was, but we don't know what that would look like. But like, it was a very real thing for people growing up at that time.
The bullish private's property. Break free of your chains,
your baby boomers,
I see.
grandparents, stuff like that.
That makes a lot of sense. But see this?
Yeah,
Pretty cool, huh? Whoa, what is that? Capitalism, baby.
Dude,
like
everyone
that.
had a
Just wait
yo-yo
till you see
phase
Chia
as a
Pets.
child,
Democracy is indispensable to
I did.
socialism. Yeah, okay, buddy. I didn't want to go here, but under capitalism, our boys back in Los Alamos cooked up a fun new toy for us. So you might want to reconsider.
That's where the bomb was tested.
What's the matter? Gulag got your tongue? Wars were a lot more fun when you could kill civilians in very specific places, usually far away. But now that complete annihilation could be achieved from the press of a button by a teenager drafted from some farm in Idaho, countries were understandably a lot more hesitant to kick off World War III.
games.
All right, we don't want a nuclear holocaust, so let's just set down our guns. But proxy wars aren't the only way to win the Cold War, Alex. Points towards victory could be scored.
That's the crazy thing. I don't even know if I don't know if I even love the term Cold War, because like there was definitely war. Are we just ignoring proxy wars or thinking that they aren't a part of a larger context? Because they absolutely are. United States, their allies and people they support, Soviet Union and like-minded states are also fighting like each other, whether it's directly, indirect, or whatever. Like, is the Cold War even a good term that way? Because it just brings in invokes the idea that there was no fighting, when in fact, no, there were insanely bloody wars. When you talk about per capita deaths, things like Vietnam and Korean War are right up there with all other wars. It's like, it's crazy, you know?
Through culture, intelligence, science, or military. Now let's take a look at what the US and Soviets did to try to score points in these categories. You got this idea from the Civilization games.
Soviet war in Afghanistan, that was
different.
So devastating.
What do you think intelligence? You probably picture a charismatic Brit from the 50s, goofy spy gadgets and gizmos, or a charismatic Brit from the 60s, and maybe a certain blue bird from the internet? No? Okay. Anyway, well, the reality of Cold War espionage consisted of a more mundane cocktail of surveillance and asset handling than a gin one. It did have its more shaken moments from time to time. Take acoustic.
By the way, I feel like I did a poll. It was probably like at least over a year ago. Who is better at espionage, KGB or the CIA? And I want to say in that poll, you guys said KGB in that. And I think it was interesting. You know, it definitely could be true, though, is I feel like the KGB put more fear that there was spying, you know, like with McCarthyism and stuff like that. Like, even if it wasn't actually espionage, Americans definitely acted in a way that they felt everything was being spied upon. Everybody was part of it, right? The whole McCarthyism, if you know what I'm talking about there, of how much there's infiltration of that. In a lot of ways, it almost seems like the KGB won the espionage part of the Cold War. What do you think about that?
Acoustic Kitty, the CIA project to transform your typical everyday cat into a world-class spy.
Yeah,
the
put
idea
like
was
microphones on them,
microphone and radio, and train them to approach Soviet officials to catch all that juicy commie gossip. Wouldn't they easily?
Well, didn't was it Khrushchev that gave a cat to like JFK or something? Who was that? I don't even know if it was JFK. Maybe it was Nixon. Didn't somebody actually give a cat to the U.S.?
See a microphone and transmitter on a cat? Well, only if they're on top of the skin. What? Those lab boys back in the CIA dungeons decided to cook up a little Frankenkitty, surgically implanting a microphone in a cat's ear canal, a transmitter at the base of its skull, and an antenna down the spine and tail.
Like that'd be the first thing.
With their crime against nature complete, they just need to train the cat, deciding to use audio cues to control its directions. But as you cat owners already know, it doesn't matter how close you can get a cat to RoboCop, they'll always end up doing whatever they want. So while initial testing went well, outside the lab, it would just wander off whenever it got bored or
that's
hungry.
What I would say.
And it was then that the CIA realized their mistake in this whole operation. They forgot to bypass that pesky sense of hunger. After one more operation, their abomination was now trained, wired, and hungered for nothing.
You're better putting it in a wooden duck like in the Office.
Stinky blood, the perfect cocktail of conditions for its first mission. Okay, we're here. Time to let the cat out of the bag. I'm reporting you to HR, Scott. Okay, Agent 009 Lives. This is what we've been training for, all right, buddy? It'll be a quick in and out 20-minute mission. Just walk up to the guys on the bench and listen to what they have to say. Don't let curiosity kill the cat. Why are you allowed to? Because I have tenure, Scott. All right, Agent, here we go.
Yes, Scott. Know your place. Oh, no!
Oh shit, Carl! Carl, grab me that shovel from the back. We gotta scrape this guy off.
According to Victor Marchetti, the cat was released from an unmarked van to eavesdrop on two men outside the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. when it was hit by a taxi almost immediately.
What the?
Well, I know you had a lot riding on this Acoustic Kitty project, Ryan, but don't worry. I've had the boys back in the lab work on a new project that's sure to cheer you right up. Introducing Electric Kitty.
What?
Robert Wallace disputed this bitter end, stating that in reality, the project was abandoned because the cat was too hard to train. Therefore, the equipment was surgically removed and it lived a, quote, long and happy life afterwards. Whether you believe the comically bad ending or the suspiciously happy one is up to you. But regardless, Acoustic Kitty took 5 years and $20 million just to end up in the trash can. Kind of like my college degree. But with that big of an investment,
spending,
I guess the lesson we could take away here is that there's more than one way to skin a cat. I hate you so much. How about we take a peek at Soviet espionage, Alex?
Yeah.
Oops. Looks like someone wasn't a good double agent. Jesus, was that necessary? Yeah, nobody really likes intel leaks, especially the Soviets, whose...
You know, the crazy thing about those, like, there were actually spies, involved in the U.S. government, and it just takes one, right? One officially recognized instance of that to completely shake the foundation of everybody's idea about security, you know?
Counterintelligence. Was that necessary? Yeah, nobody really likes intel leaks, especially the Soviets, whose counterintelligence programs were far superior to the West.
Yeah.
The key to their effectiveness was quite simple. All they needed was a totalitarian state with an authoritarian government who gave them free rein to target absolutely any threat to sensitive intelligence, whether real or imaginary.
You remember, well, if you guys saw Chernobyl, the HBO special, I thought one of the enlightening things, and you know, I know they exacerbated a lot of the info in there, but there was like they were talking about how they were the scientists were being spied upon, right, by the KGB, and you know when they find that out, they appeal to the leader of the KGB. I forgot what that guy's name was. Like you're like you know, the Russian scientists are like, you have spies following us. He's like, yeah, we all do. He's like, you see those guys down the hall? Like, I'm the leader of the KGB, but see those people down the hall? Those people are watching me. Circle of accountability. And then you saw anything that broke out, if there was even suspect of potential leaks in the KGB, you were thrown in a prison or freaking gulag or something. They took that stuff way harsher than the US probably did. You know, I don't know. Maybe there were as many people secretly detained like the KGB did with their potential leaks, but they were messing around.
As you can guess, many innocents were executed through these tactics. But their deaths would not be in vain, Alex, for this aggressive mindset helped perfect Soviet murder tactics. Introducing the Bulgarian umbrella, perfect for all your rainy day and political dissident silencing needs.
Gun?
While appearing as an ordinary umbrella on the surface, this crafty device contained a hidden pneumatic mechanism that shot a ricin-filled pellet just 1.5 millimeters thick, or 15,250
This is the spy
the thickness of a gumball to help you visualize. This elusive gadget made perfect for an assassin who needed a masquerade as, say, a comically inconspicuous British aristocrat on his morning stroll over a London bridge, which just so happens to be the exact circumstances where one Georgy Markov was assassinated in 1978. Hello, fellow Brit. Hello. I see you've noticed my umbrella. As my babushka always said, Simrasatmir Adinotrish. Oh, I mean grandmother. Why does your umbrella have a mag? In case I need to reload. You never know when you might miss. The rain. Uh-oh, looks like it's raining. Here, let me open my umbrella for you. Georgy Markov was a Bulgarian dissident writer who defected to London in 1969, where he continued to critique the Bulgarian government at the BBC and Radio Free Europe. But even with all traces of his name and books scrubbed away in Bulgaria, dictator Todor Zivkov couldn't stand Markov's continued existence smearing his name overseas. Ugh, what a
all
day.
The puppet leaders of
Maybe I'll listen to some BBC.
Soviet satellite
I think
states.
I've heard being a little naughty. This just in, Bulgarian correspondent Georgy Markov has informed the BBC that Todor Zivkov, quote, pours his milk before his cereal because he's a big, stinky, dumb poopy head. Well, I say.
Okay, who does that?
Poopy head behavior, Todd. With
Is that one of those things that we say, like, okay, pouring the milk before the cereal? Is that a thing that like people say happens, but like doesn't? I've heard people say they're like, well, like that because then it doesn't get it as soggy, and it's like the cereal's already designed to handle it. Handle the milk. I'm definitely not a milk first guy. Are there actual people there? Let yourselves be known. You might open yourself to ridicule, but
Technical assistance from the Soviet KGB, Zivkov had the Bulgarian Secret Service assassinate Georgy Markov on his own birthday. The writer was on Waterloo Bridge in London when he felt a sharp pain in the back of his leg and turned to find a man pick up an umbrella and immediately step into a taxi. He became sick that same evening, and 4 days later, he was dead. After an autopsy, a metal pellet with drilled holes was discovered in his leg, and the media went crazy over the umbrella murder story.
See, the Americans, when like the CIA would conduct assassinations, it wasn't nearly as slick as like these ones. These were like creative ones. The Soviets had the creativity. The US just send some dude or drop a bomb or something. It was just like there was no creativity whatsoever.
On paper, this sounds like a textbook espionage dub for the Eastern Bloc. But then again, when the Bulgarian umbrella is more present in Western media than actual history, who really benefited most at the end of the day? I mean, I don't know if you can really call an episode of NCIS as capitalizing more than an actual assassination. You're right, I'm just being facetious. The Soviets definitely take the intelligence dub in this bout, while the CIA get points for creativity, coming up with an intricate, elaborate cyborg cat spy thing. The Soviets kept it simple. squeeze air, and poison go forward. So Alex, the lesson here is at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how cunning or crafty you try to be, you'll never be as effective as good old-fashioned murder. Next up is the science victory, and what better bout of science and history is there than the space race? The space race was a competition between the Americans and Soviets for superior spaceflight capability, and while many people today think this was settled when Elon bitch-slapped Bezos by putting a Tesla into orbit, the real story is much more nuanced. Both
the space race didn't actually end with landing on the moon. It was the actual end goal was, okay, who can put a car into space?
Aerospace origins in the late 19th, early 20th centuries with Konstantin Tsiolkovsky and Robert Goddard, who are considered two of the founding fathers of aeronautics. Both of these guys made a bunch of important early rocket advancements. For example, Goddard is notable for inventing the first liquid-fueled rocket. Sir, I did it. Come quick.
Also, former Nazis that came over to the U.S.
Soviets are so fucked in 40 years.
After the war.
Most people crown the Nazis as the sole king of early rocketry, but both the U.S. and Soviets have been progressing in these fields as well. In fact, the Soviets' rocket tech was on par with the Nazis in the early 1930s. That is, until Stalin's policies slowed things down a bit.
What was the guy's name?
Jesus Christ! Nevertheless,
the Nazis, the rocket guy,
space race by launching the first ever artificial satellite, Sputnik 1, a big metal ball with 4 antennas, a clear nod to the all-powerful flying spaghetti monster inside the little satellite.
Sputnik freaked Americans out because it was the first satellite, right? Really first thing ever put into orbit. And all it really did was beep and stuff. But like it freaked people out, like Americans. They're like, is that thing a weapon? Is it like tracking our movements? You know, Americans lost their mind. And it was something you could see, like it moved like a satellite. You could see it in the sky, and it absolutely freaked Americans out, and led to Americans thinking like, hey, these Soviets, they're like, are they ahead of us in anything? You know, like they're winning. Are they winning now? You know, so what the Cold War was, you know, it was like one of those many different competitions in the Cold War or the space race during the Cold War where it was like if you were winning that, like that meant that your whole philosophical system of like communism or capitalism was the best one. It was like evidence of that. So
satellite was a radio that transmitted menacing beeps to the people below, sending a clear message of its existence and terrifying Americans as it flew overhead.
Welcome back to WTTL, your station for all things Elvis. But first, a message from our sponsor, Dr. Lang's Lobotomies, ideal for hysterical women. Use code BRAINBLAST for 20% off for Noggin November. And remember, you're one snip away from a wife who obeys.
Yeah, oh, I hate that. The Soviets immediately responded with Sputnik 2, this time putting the first animal into orbit, a dog named Laika. They just snatched a random stray, figuring if anything can survive the hellscape that was the Moscow streets, then the literal exosphere shouldn't be that different. After a bunch of training, Laika was strapped up and launched into orbit. She was never intended to survive the mission, so they planned to ease her suffering with some poisoned food later in the trip, which would have been great if she hadn't been roasted in a makeshift air fryer in the first few hours when an engine failed to separate. This could be due to the fact that the spacecraft was both designed and built in only 4 weeks in order to hit the launch deadline. America responded with their own launch in the formation of...
Another time we got to give salutes to Laika. Gone but not forgotten. Your sacrifice pushed society forward.
NASA. Both sides are now just popping off more satellites, dogs, monkeys, and finally naked monkeys, with Yuri Gagarin beating Alan Shepard to the punch as first talking animal in space by just a few weeks. Things then started getting real serious when John F. Kennedy got elected and announced the US would throw a dude on that cool rocket in the sky by the end of the decade. Congratulations on your election, President Kennedy. Just to get you up to speed on things, the Cold War has been progressing. Cold War, huh? I'll show those Soviets cold. Grab those NASA nerds, General. We're going to space.
Because to be honest, like, if there was a space race happening, by the time he was elected in 60, the U.S. was losing it. And we'll see the big picture if they show the big picture. Every milestone, basically, except for putting a person on the moon, was first achieved by the Soviets. The first to put a person, something in orbit, first to take something to the moon. By the way, first to send something to Mars. All of that stuff was done by Soviets. I always found it kind of humorous. Like the U.S. kind of like once they went to the moon, just like declared like victory, like we won, like that was it, you know, like that was like all we cared about, like we won, we're taking our ball and going home.
No, not that kind of cold. Fuck it! The moon! But don't. Right away, sir.
Let's go back at the whole thing.
Space! No, not that kind of cold. Fuck it! The moon! But don't. Right away, sir. Consider it done. Good.
Actual quote.
Sorry about that. He would have just kept going. Does he seriously not know what Cold War means? Just humor him for now. All problems will be solved in Dallas. After many achievements on both sides.
Oh, he's saying the government took him out. Oh gosh, the conspiracy lives. I don't know. You can watch a million documentaries on that stuff. Interestingly though, like the Cold War was at its hottest during the Kennedy administration, specifically with like Cuban Missile Crisis.
Spacewalk and the first docking in space, the US would go on to do just that, fulfilling man's innate desire to secure the biggest rock on the playground with the Apollo program. While putting a guy on the moon is cool and all, it's not as cool as the first living beings to reach the moon, tortoises. The Soviets decided to shoot a pair of them around the moon, probably because they saw America put out a movie called Planet of the Apes and were like, suka bliet, choosing an animal with natural armor in case any space monkeys came.
No, they might come back and be like the Ninja Turtles.
That's not the case. We're talking about spaceflight, Alex. Can't you let a bird dream? The tortoises made it around the moon, and unlike earlier, these animals returned safely to be rescued and dissected. The US also had its fun share of animals in space, my favorite being the time they shot a bunch of jellyfish into the cosmos. For science. They swear. 2,000 of the little critters went up, and chemicals were used to get them swimming and reproducing, which they did. Very well.
Did they actually
landed with 60,000. But once the astrofish came back, they weren't able to swim around very well, because they just straight up didn't have a concept of gravity.
Yeah, probably.
Run, Aaron! Gravity doesn't apply to them! Space deserves an entire video of its own, but I know you nerds are foaming at the mouth to hear who I think won the space race. Let me just put it this way. Between the two countries, only one killed the cutest dog I've ever seen and later had their own scientists regret it and claim they didn't get enough out of the mission to justify her death. So that's about as clear of an L as I've ever seen.
Even the
and if you want
Soviets
my more detailed answer, you have to wait for my behind-the-scenes commentary on my second channel. You're really going the gatekeeping, shameless plug route? Shh, can you hear that? No, that's right. There's no one to hear you scream. Next up is the culture section, and just to be upfront, America wins this category, hands down. Kids are hitting layups in Mongolia, but for the sake of checking all our boxes, we're gonna talk about it anyway. Soda, pop, or carbo, as I guess some degenerates call it, is just about as synonymous with America as the bald eagle itself. Carbo? And that was precisely the problem for Georgy Zhukov. Hero of the Soviet Union, defeater of Nazis, Zhukov became a big fan of Coca-Cola ever since Eisenhower introduced him to it around the time of World War II. But the delicate fizzy cocktail was banned in the Soviet Union, and Zhukov, being prominent in the public eye, couldn't be seen consuming a symbol of American imperialism. We know what happens when Stalin gets cranky. So he decided to reach out to US President Harry Truman for a solution to his dilemma. President Truman?
Zuki,
Coca-Cola.
Are you considering defecting?
No, stop asking.
Make it called
I was actually calling to see if you could help me acquire some Coke.
Well, we were saving most of it for black neighborhoods, but I think we can work something out.
No, wow, Jesus, I'm talking about Coca-Cola. I can't be seen getting it in the Soviet
There's some weird
Union.
stuff
They
about
wouldn't
that.
allow for it. Can you help me out with this?
Maybe you could.
Other than overthrowing my government.
I'll get you one of these days.
Neighborhoods.
Let me see if I can work something out.
Truman reached out to Coca-Cola, who then developed White Coke, a special clear version of Coke that had its food coloring removed and was packaged in clear glass bottles
never heard
with a
of
white
this.
cap and red star. This way, when Zhukov...
There was Kami Cola? I remember, maybe y'all are too young, but anyone remember Crystal Pepsi? It was a clear Pepsi. I don't remember if it tasted different or something like that. Dude, I had no idea there was like communist Coke. That's amazing.
Removed, it was packaged in clear glass bottles with a white cap and red star. This way, when Zhukov wanted a nice refreshing Coke, the public wouldn't see their idol drinking a Yankee abomination, just half liters of vodka.
Cool.
And the image of war hero turned alcoholic veteran was a Soviet-fitting brand the public could very much so get behind. But let's check on America and the yin to Coca-Cola's yang, Pepsi. In 1959, Pepsi participated in the American National Exhibition in Moscow, where we showed off what it means to be an American. Here we see Soviets observing a motionless car from behind, an allusion to driving in an East Coast city. Over here, Khrushchev is experiencing the wonder that is an American kitchen. Will he try his hand at operating the washing machine? No, they brought a woman for that. Gee, watching your wife work sure is tiring. How about a nice refreshing Pepsi to take the edge off? This photo was exactly the marketing juice PepsiCo needed in the ongoing cola wars, and it led to Pepsi acquiring a monopoly on cola in the Soviet Union. With restrictions on the ruble, Pepsi exchanged their scrumptious syrup for vodka, which they could then sell for cash. This deal remained in place until Pepsi's growth outpaced the vodka's growth, leading to a renegotiation. Yeah, this vodka deal was great and all, but there are only so many kids with fake IDs in the States. Not to worry, comrade, we've arranged an offer for you. What is this? Pirates? Something to go with Naval Fleet.
Oh, what the?
There it is. What are you doing? You wanted me to bring something new to the table, so I bring ships to table. Thank you, Igor. Пожалуйста. Figuratively! Bring something figuratively to the table! And why would I want a naval fleet? To help with your current conflict with Coca-Cola. You are in Cola War,
I love this story.
Figuratively! The Soviet Union...
What was the thing? Like, the Pepsi was like the... Technically, like the fifth, I forget the number, like not largest navy in the world, because like they had, the Soviet Union couldn't pay. So they were just like, here's some decommissioned warships and stuff.
Gave Pepsi 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer as payment for soda. You may have heard this story before, as it's become somewhat of an internet legend in recent years, with articles and your know-it-all nerd friend Kevin claiming this trade made Pepsi the sixth largest navy in the world
military.
This actually wasn't quite the case. These vessels were outdated and going to be sold
get
for
scrapped,
scrap. But even still, they wouldn't have made Pepsi even remotely close to the sixth largest navy in the world at the time.
Is that what they ended up doing? Was it just they were able to sell it for scrap?
When I dug into the story deeper, there seemed to be a lot of scrutiny as to whether or not this even happened in the first place. I was able to find 2 articles from 1989 claiming the sale did take place, and political expert Dr. Paul Musgrave wrote a feature about the story and says that it definitely happened and is attested to in other sources. To me, it seems most likely that Pepsi acted as a sort of middleman in the exchange of Pepsi for a few $1 million worth of Soviet vessel scrappage. But this was just a small fry compared to the big kahuna that would transpire the coming year. A multi-billion-dollar deal where the Soviets would build brand spanking new oil tankers for Pepsi. That's right, liquid gold for fizz to behold. Things were starting to look up for little old Pepsi. Well, surely a multi-decade monopoly would consolidate a strong lead in the market. Oh, that's embarrassing. Last but not least, we have the military category. The US and Soviets had to get creative with this one, as in the world of nuclear juiciness, we typically want to avoid terraforming the Earth into a radioactive wasteland.
Let's get into the arms race.
Fair game. It's 1958. Americans are panicking after the Sputnik launch, and the US needed a strong response to show they weren't falling behind. Okay, boys, where's Captain Lloyd? I believe he's taking his wife to an appointment at Dr. Lang's lobotomy. About time. Anyway, let's get started. We need to do something big to boost public morale. What do you got for us, General Clint? The Army is working on our own satellite program. I say we put our faith in the Explorer 1 launch. That'll be good, but we'd still only be second. What about you, Major Tom?
I believe we should focus
on Project Mercury, sir, and putting the first man in space. Good, I like it. And your thoughts, Alfred the Moon Hater? The United States kicked off Project A119, a plan to detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon's surface. Their hope was that the explosion would be large enough to be visible from Earth with the naked eye, and consequently boost public morale once they witnessed the extent of America's might.
Nuke the moon,
but of course, they need to sell some additional reasons beyond explosions are sick, bro. So it would help answer some rudimentary astrogeological questions? What? Yeah, science and shit. A team of America's top minds got to work calculating the sweet spot between popping off the world's most expensive firecracker and flashbanging the northern hemisphere while kinetically bombarding Venus. They landed on a warhead with a 1.7 kiloton yield, detonated right on the ironically named Terminator line, where the light side of the moon touches the dark side, but not too far over where it's all dark and scary. While it was found to be technologically feasible, this project was canceled for a few reasons. One, they were afraid of the danger to the public.
It's ridiculous.
Fail, which if we just take a peek at launch
can we not just have with all these percentage success rate? How about just it was a stupid idea? Can't we ever just like say that? Can we just let it go?
It's in the 50s and 60s.
Because it was stupid.
We'd call this worrisome. 2, potential nuclear fallout would have made the moon landing photos
Cold War made
like
everybody just
triumph and
stupid,
more like an HBO show. And 3, because they feared exploding nukes on the
show.
moon might look, cartoonishly evil or something. Personally, if it were up to me, I'd say act first, make YouTube apologies later. That's why we wouldn't put you in positions of power. Right you are, Alex. I would just take it by force. But how to overthrow a democratic government is a video for another day. Let's see what the Russians have in store for the military category. Long-range bombers were all the rage in the mid-20th century. After all, you needed some way to bring the bigger and brighter suns you're building to all your friends. And with advancements in anti-air shooty things, these bombers needed to fly higher and faster to keep their spicy little presence safe. Introducing the Tu-22, the first supersonic bomber to enter production in the Soviet Union, even after both prototypes were destroyed in testing, killing multiple people. Third time's the charm, eh?
You guys ever heard this theory, you know, with like also the hype of like UFO sightings during the Cold War? I've heard, you know, people say that some of those sightings and stuff could have been like experimental craft from the Soviet Union as well. The stuff where the United States, you know, is like vehemently denied that any of the craft is like U.S. military related, that some of it was like Soviet related. So some of those like UFO sightings, some of those type of things that were picked up and it maybe even came over to the U.S. What do you think about that?
We'll fix it on the go. And fix it on the go, they did not. While it had an intimidating look that was really hammered home by some impressive chompers, this would turn out to be more of a warning to its own crew than adversaries, as it was plagued with a stupendous amount of serious problems. Design issues included wings that would deform and partially melt at high speeds, terrible stability that had the pilot essentially arm wrestling the yoke the entire flight to keep being a plane, and a terrible cockpit layout that was described as a, quote, inverted hedgehog, with levers so far out of reach that pilots had to improvise ropes and hooks to operate them. But perhaps my favorite design flaw was the ejection system, which didn't shoot crewmen upwards like you'd imagine. That's where the precariously placed turbines sat hungry for breakfast. But rather below the plane, where the ground is. This meant that ejections were only safe above 350 meters, and when you take into account most accidents occur during takeoff and landing, you might as well stick it out if you run into trouble on the runway, or risk being turned into fertilizer. There were even times where people just straight up fell out of the plane. Granted, this would happen while the aircraft was parked and safely intact, unlike the crew's spines. All of this would earn the bomber one of its many colorful nicknames, Man-Eater, due to its quirky little knack of killing many of its own crewmen with an astronomical failure rate of 70 units lost out of 311 produced. For my Baldur's Gate friends out there, that's roughly equivalent to rolling a D4, and if it's a 1, you die. All things considered, pilots were not very excited to fly this death trap. However, it was an extremely sought after assignment for crews, and that, my dear Alex, can be traced back to the coolant system. Coolant? That's right, Alex. The cockpit had an overheating problem that was solved with an evaporator supplied with a shocking amount of coolant. This coolant was a mixture of 60% distilled water and 40% ethanol. And when we pour that into our handy little analyzer here, it ran on vodka? It ran on vodka, yes. Naturally, there were numerous reports of crews drinking the plane's coolant and getting, quote, paralytically drunk, earning the plane its most popular nickname, Supersonic Booze Carrier. Pilots of the bomber even had complete control over how much coolant was consumed during flight, fantastic. Or if any was used at all. Jesus, you look terrible. My name's actually Vlad, but thank you, sir. I just need to cool off. Did you and Alec run out of coolant? Oh, yeah. We used it up real fast, and we didn't kiss or anything. What? I'm just saying, I didn't kiss a guy. I was just asking. You're just coming off really accusatory, and I just want to be crystal clear that I did not gingerly touch lips with Alec. Nothing happened. Right. Do you need more coolant then? That would be most appreciated. Interestingly, it appeared as though the coolant was utilized with a shocking efficiency, as aircrews post-flight reports would show 100% of it was used during flights. The Air Force would later crack down on this, restricting access to bombers between flights and closely monitoring coolant levels. However, keeping Russians from vodka is like trying to keep predators from Roblox, so they found a way to keep the practice alive anyway. While neither of these stories are really strong wins for either side, I'd have to award the Soviets the point for this one, as between the two, well, it actually happened. At least for funniest flaws, you mean people dying? For all its flaws, it at least helped boost airman morale. And as my cool college friend Scott once said, stop bringing your Game Boy to the club. I mean, when life leaves you drowning in stress, might as well choose the liquid. He flunked out, but I think the wisdom still stands. So, Alex, looks like we've got a solid tie here. Think you've got what it takes to win this Cold War? What? Half of these stories were disasters. I didn't learn anything useful. I've got no idea what to do. Alex. What did Scott say about drowning? Choose the fluid? Choose the fluid, Alex. Attaboy. Now plug my merch. Good, good. The Cold War, 9 out of 10 stars.
Cold War. Would do again. All right, final thoughts. All right, so I feel like this video was like a whole bunch of ideas that they had all kind of put into one. It kind of seemed like so each one of those things, like those categories they did, it's like it could have been their own video. You know what I mean? So they packed it into one, just one big Cold War one. And it's why it was longer. So that was neat. It was just packed with so much stuff here. And we're going on like 40 minutes here for my coverage, almost doubling it here. But man, a lot to talk about. A lot of those were such fascinating stories. It just showed you how hysterical things were during the Cold War. Like the attempts of like trying to get an upper hand were often so wild. And so like I said I said earlier, like, did the Cold War just make everybody stupid? I don't know. What do you think about that? All right. Another great job by BlueJay again, who's just, becoming such I think a driving force in the, funny history kind of tie-in community. And I always appreciate that stuff. So, all right. With that, y'all, we'll see you next time.